In February 2019, 40 Indian paramilitary soldiers were killed in an attack in Pulwama district of the occupied Himalayan region. Shortly after the incident, New Delhi pointed the finger at Islamabad, accusing it of orchestrating the bombing, which brought the two nuclear rivals to the brink of another conflict. However, in 2023, Satyapal Malik, who was the governor of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir at that time, revealed in an interview with India's The Wire that he realized that all the onus of the attack was placed on Pakistan by the Modi administration to gain electoral advantage. During the explosive interview with Karan Thapar, Malik remarked, Narendra Modi is a very ill-informed person, perhaps not entirely. That year, Modi has frequently referenced the Pulwama attack to galvanize voters in the general election, openly blaming Pakistan. The message struck a chord with his Hindu voter base, helping to propel Modi to a resounding victory and returning the BJP to power with a commanding majority in parliament. That same year, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir was stripped of its semi-autonomous status, according to Human Rights Watch, since the occupied territory has experienced its most severe crackdown by New Delhi's forces. In 2023, the digital rights group Assess Now reported 187 internet shutdowns worldwide, with India leading the list at 84 to 49 of them in the Kashmir. Since the revocation of its special status, the region has experienced an unprecedented clampdown, with rights groups warning that new laws and policies are designed to marginalize and oppress Muslims in Kashmir. In these circumstances, Wizarat, who described Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as an open-air prison, argued that it's nearly impossible for an insurgency to make headway. The facts don't support India's claims of a new wave of insurgency. There is a heavy presence of Indian troops in the territory. Communication and movement have been tightly restricted since 2019. How could an insurgent movement acquire modern weapons in such an environment? According to Wizarat, the Indian leaders aim to kill two birds with one stone. Historically, reports of the unrest in both India and Kashmir are tied to Muslim insurgents allegedly supported by Pakistan. Modi, she added, has consistently sought to brand Kashmir's legitimate struggle for freedom as terrorism while portraying Pakistan as a state sponsor of that terrorism. Wizarat believes that the Prime Minister of India is effectively building a narrative that casts Kashmiris as Muslim terrorists opposed to peace. Given the number of reports from the year alone, it appears that India's machinery is accelerating its effort to construct a negative image of the people of Kashmir, likely to legitimize any future aggressive actions against them. The UN, she added, must investigate such claims before they are considered credible. Commenting on India's narrative that frames Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir's struggle for freedom as terrorism, Pir Ali Raza Bukhari, a religious scholar and former member of Azad Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Assembly, said the Indian government has persistently tried to portray the legitimate struggle of the Kashmiri people for the self-determination as a terrorist movement by accusing freedom fighters of using modern weaponry like drones. They seek to lend credibility to the false narrative. Bukhari, who holds permanent representative status at the United Nations, emphasized that the Kashmiri struggle is anchored in international law and the right to self-determination, a principle recognized by the UN. This movement is fundamentally peaceful, driven by decades of oppression and the denial of basic human rights to the people of Kashmir. Labeling freedom fighters as terrorists is a well-worn tactic used by the occupying powers to delegitimize genuine struggles for freedom. When asked about accusations of Kashmiri fighters employing advanced weaponry, Bukhari said, "They swear to divert attention from India's ongoing human rights violations in the region. The narrative India is pushing aims to paint members of the Kashmiri freedom movement as aggressors, while in reality the Kashmiri people have endured decades of brutal occupation and state-sponsored violence." Bukhari further highlighted the oppressive conditions in Kashmir, describing it as one of the most militarized zones in the world. With nearly 1 million troops stationed there, often outnumbering the local population, Kashmir is under extreme surveillance and control. Frequent restrictions on communications, including internet and phone services, isolate the region from the outside world. According to The Guardian, India military Sources allege that suspects militants in Kashmir are using drones and other automatic weapons. However, given the heavy presence of Indian forces and the state's proven capability to control movement and communication at will, as seen in past crackdowns, the credibility of these claims is questionable. A senior defense analyst underscored that the presence of extensive Indian military apparatus cast doubt on the likelihood of the militants acquiring advanced weaponry unnoticed. He noted that after the downgrade of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir's status, the Modi administration effectively created a situation reminiscent of the Stone Age in the valley. There was an 18-month-long internet and phone shutdown that began in the Indian-occupied Himalayan region in 2019, which the Indian government extended and employed at will. This shutdown continued until February 5, 2021, when 4G mobile data services were reinstated. Although slow-speed internet had been restored a year earlier with limited access. According to Statista, a global data aggregation platform, there have been more than 433 internet outages in Kashmir over the past decade, and shutdowns have become more frequent in recent years in the conflict-ridden region. Under such heavy control, how does any militant organization acquire sophisticated weaponry? We are talking about unmanned aerial vehicles or drones, not needles. Experts monitoring Modi's Hindu nationalist network and his unprecedented ascent in Indian politics have consistently noted that the Indian Prime Minister secures political gains by projecting a negative image of Muslim nationwide, particularly by labeling the Kashmir struggle for freedom as a terrorist movement backed by Pakistan. His ultra-Hindu nationalist supporters readily embrace this narrative. Modi's rhetoric has escalated recently. Since October 7th, experts note he has increasingly amplified the threat of terrorism in Kashmir, drawing parallel between the freedom movement and terrorism, much like Benjamin Netanyahu's approach to Hamas. There are clear parallels between Prime Minister Modi's policies in Kashmir to those of the Netanyahu in Gaza. Both leaders have attempted to frame resistance movement as acts of terrorism to justify extreme military actions.